If you want to do screen sharing using Ecamm Live on your Mac, then there are a number of different ways you can do that, and I'm going to tell you all about them in this video. Hello and welcome to Take One Tech. My name's Alec, and so in this video we're going to be talking about screen sharing and how you can incorporate it into your video productions. So I use this obviously when I do things like sharing my desktop, and this actual question came about because of a viewer question. So Michael, this is the answer for you, and he had specifically asked how I did this view here where I've got the view of my website and how I'd got it so neatly into that little box. And incidentally, if you want to get in touch, then probably now is a good time to say you can head over to my website too. Helps if I point in the right direction. takeonetech.io, and I've got a contact page on there, and then also there's that little chat icon in the bottom right hand corner as well, so you can get in touch that way as well, or just obviously leave a comment down below as well. So in terms of the way that I'd done that, you may have noticed that I wasn't using any any hands to actually scroll that web page, and that's because I actually cheated with this one, because I use this particular scene in a number of different videos that I do whenever I mention the website. I've got another one where I say this whole production was made using Ecamm Live, and if you like what you're seeing and would like to have a go at making your own live productions on the fly or using it for live streaming, then you can go to takeonetech.io/ecamm and get your free trial there. So that was a little cheeky way to demonstrate the fact that this overlay looks exactly the same as my previous one for my website. I've also got one for Epidemic Sounds while we're at it. And so I wanted a template that I could use to sort of show these off, where I give a link to my website or whatever. And I actually cheated because that little scrolling website view is just a screen recording. So what I'll do is I'll show you how I've done this part first, and then we'll move on to the actual real screen sharing capabilities within Ecamm Live, and I'll show you how you could actually make what I've just done and make everything fit perfectly using the sort of live screen sharing as well. So first of all, to how I made these. Well, as I say, I took a little video screen recording of the website scrolling, and the way that I did that, if I come over to my screen sharing, and this now really is screen sharing on the wrong web page there, but there we go. So if I wanted to grab my website, then the way you do that on the Mac is use the built-in screen capturing functions. So if you press Command, Shift and 5, then it will bring up, as a default, it will probably bring up something like this. And so at the bottom, you can see that there are different options or different buttons. It might not be immediately obvious, and if you've been using a Mac for years, then you may not have known that they added this in, I think, I want to say about 2 or 3 OS releases ago, so it may be something that you just weren't aware that was even there as a function. So you've got a number of options. First of all, you can click here and capture the entire screen, or you can select that you want to capture a window, so a picture of a window, or you can have a particular portion. So here I can just drag this, and then if I was to click this capture button here, it would just take a screenshot and save it to my desktop or wherever. There are some controls for that, but we'll come to that in a minute. But the other thing you can do is you can also do a screen recording. So this is a great way if you just want to make a quick recording of something that's going on your screen. Then you can just click in here and click the record button, and it will record your whole desktop so that you can just make a little video about whatever is going on or anything you want to demonstrate. But then here there is this one, which is record selected portion, and that is what we're going to do. So I'm just going to highlight the area of this page that I want to show. So I want to cut out all of the actual header of the website and just have something like that. So it just shows us what's in that window. And now if I click on record, sorry, I should say, there are some other options down here as well. So if I click on this options button here, then you can choose where you want to save it. You can also have a timer so that it just records a specific time, like 5 seconds or 10 seconds, but we're going to manually start and stop this one. You can also choose the microphone, so whether you want to have sound on it. So if you were going to record a quick screen demo or something like that, then you could maybe have your microphone activated so that you could talk over it as well. But we're going to select none, so it's just silent. And then there's a couple of other options. So show floating thumbnail. That will become obvious what that is afterwards, but it's basically when the recording is finished, it will just have a little thumbnail in the bottom that you can click on to access the file easily. And then remember last selection. So that is this area that has been selected. If we activate that, then it will mean that when we next come to start up, it will remember that this is the area of screen we want to capture. And that's useful if we do want to do this repeatedly for different websites or things like that, for making these scenes that I'm doing here, because then I know that I just need to fit everything into that window and resize things to fit there, and then it will be exactly the same size each time. The last thing is show mouse clicks. So again, something that's useful if you're using this to create just a quick, easy screen demo, then you can turn that on so that people will be able to see your clicks. But for now, that is all as we want it. So I'm going to click on the record button instead. And then once I do, it should start recording. Now, what will happen is somewhere up in the menu bar, you'll see a little stop button has appeared. It's hard to highlight. When you're recording like this, it actually dims the whole of the screen except the area that you're recording. So it's hard for me to actually highlight what I'm showing here. But it's basically just up at the very top. There's this little stop button appeared in the menu bar. So that is where we're going to end our recording. But for now, it is now capturing this area of the screen, which is visible. So if I just click on this scroll bar, all I did was, as smoothly as possible, he says, getting off to a rough start, I just scrolled down through the web page like this, and I did that for about 20 or 30 seconds. And when I'd finished, I clicked on the stop button up at the top, and this is that thing that I told you about, the thumbnail sort of preview. So when you capture a screen recording or a screenshot, then it just appears down here. So that was that little option to toggle on or off. So now we could click this and open the video, but I'll show you how I actually use this. If I come over to my Keynote, I do all of my overlays in Keynote, and yeah, I've done a whole video about how I do those, so I'll leave a link to that up in the top corner and also down in the description. And incidentally, in one of the larger tutorials that I did all about overlays, then I did actually create an overlay pack and also a template pack as well. So you can go and download that from my website, takeonetech.io, and yeah, it's right there on the top of the front page, a 4.5-hour tutorial if you've got the time, but if not, then just scroll down and get that free icon pack. So this is where I do my my overlays, as I say, and this is the overlay basically for that little scene that we saw earlier. So if I just preview what this is doing, you can see the yellow part sort of swipes out of the way. That black part over on the left hand side is actually transparent when it's exported as a movie, and then you can see where the website part appears over on the right hand side. Although when you preview it in window like this, it doesn't actually play out the full movie, but essentially it looks like this, doesn't it? There we go. That's what the finished article looks like, and the website pops up, and then that scrolling comes in there as well. So if I go back to my Keynote presentation, you can also see that I've got my different objects down the right-hand side, down the left-hand side rather, and on the left-hand side is where we do our animation. So I've got different effects, and if I just bring in my build order here, you can see these different things happening. Again, I did a whole presentation, a whole video rather, about how to do animated overlays. So I'll link to that on the top corner and in the description as well. So I won't go through exactly the process here, but I'll just show you that we've got this different build order. And so somewhere in here is the movie itself. So that just plays into the scene. So that is how I did that. I sneakily made it look like a screen sharing shot, but it isn't actually screen sharing. It's a pre-recorded video. And as I say, I've got one of those for various different things as well. However, it is possible to get exactly the same effect. If I wanted to do it live, so to say, let me show you how we would do that. So if we go back to my screen sharing, and then what I'll show you is, what we want to do is we want to create something where we've got this this window in that exact same shot that we just made. So what I'll do is I'll come back to a completely blank sheet, and what I'm going to do is talk you through some of the screen sharing options you have available to you in Ecamm Live. So when we start a new scene, we have a couple of options. And if I come into demo mode, so that hopefully this becomes a bit clearer, with our scenes, I'll just move this out of the way. clear my desktop up a bit so that it doesn't get too confusing. We can turn off all of this because we don't need any of these. So we're really interested in our scenes, and we'll come to overlays in a minute as well. So in our scenes, if we want to have create a new scene, then we can either come down to the bottom to this little plus and click on that one, or we can go to scene and then new scene, new empty scene. But I've already done that, so this is a new scene. And what we can do with the actual scene is we can change the source. So it can either be blank like this, or we can change the source to be the camera, which is what it just was. Or you can change to a video file, so then that means you can just have a full screen video playing, or you've got this screen share option. So if I select that one, what you'll see is that it defaults to a screen sharing view, and then also it's got the picture-in-picture with the camera in. So this is the sort of default way that it opens up. Now, within the screen sharing view, you've got a couple of options, well, more than a couple actually. So you can choose the screen that you want to share. So at the moment I'm sharing my secondary display, or I can click on primary and it will show my full desktop of my MacBook over on the other side. And you can see how that's all fitting into the screen. And just to be perfectly clear, if I stop demo mode for a moment, there you go, you can see that it is capturing literally the whole of the screen. And because my MacBook is 1920 by 1200, that's why it's got these little bars down the side, because it doesn't quite fit. So that is the full screen sharing. So back to demo mode for a moment. You can also actually share the active application, or the current application. So because I've got Safari open, if I click on that one, then you can see that now, one second, if I come over to the active application, there you go. So you can see now it's actually just focused right in on just that application. And in fact, let me bring it over onto this main window here, main desktop that I'm currently sharing in preview mode, demo mode rather, got to get the terminology right. Because what I want you to be able to see is I want you to see how Ecamm Live actually handles the window size. If I make the window really small, so this is the window here that I'm moving around on the screen, but you can see how in the output window, if I just quickly flick out of demo mode, you can see that you're seeing the whole of the window. It's got a little border around it, but I'll show you about that one shortly as well. But yeah, it is doing a really good job of sort of tracking it and making sure that, you know, even if you make it a really tall window, it fits in the whole of that window, so that what you're demonstrating, you can be sure that it's all going to be captured within your output, if you see what I mean. Now, there are a few other options that you've got in terms of sort of framing this, and these are in the system preferences, the application preferences, and that is accessed by clicking this little cogwheel here at the bottom of the interface. And if you click that, then you'll see in the Ecamm Live preferences, then we've got a number of different options. I'm going to do a whole video that is specifically like a deep dive into all of these different preferences, because there are some that may be not quite so obvious, or you might not have known where to find them. So I'll do that and link to that up in the top corner as soon as I've made it. But we want to go specifically to the screen sharing tab here. Now, there are a few different options specific to screen sharing, and if I just reorganize this a little bit so that maybe we can fit this all into one screen, and hopefully it should all be clear. So bear in mind, in case it doesn't get confusing, this window up at the top, this is my output from Ecamm Live. So if I just switch out of demo mode, you can see it's basically the screen sharing, and it's got my little picture in the bottom corner. And I'll come back into the demo mode so you can see the full interface. We're sharing this window that is just here. Okay, so in the screen sharing options, at the moment we're sharing a window, but if we were sharing the full desktop, then you could actually choose whether you want to include the icons that are on your desktop or not. So, you know, if you've got a bit of a cluttered desktop, then you could toggle that on and off here so that people wouldn't see all the files listed all over your desktop of your computer. The next one down is include desktop picture. So you may just want a blank background. I'm pretty boring really and have a grey background to my desktop anyway. But if I toggle that off, you'll see that the background then turns black. So that would be another thing if you've got some sort of a background that you didn't want to include in the screen sharing, then you can toggle that on and off there. You'll notice that there is like a sort of gap all the way around the window. So even if I move the main window around, Ecamm Live is very clever and follows it, but it leaves this little border around it. Well, that you can just toggle on and off here. So you can see if I toggle that on and off, then there's no margin. And so we can actually get it to fit pretty accurately into exactly the window size if we wanted, by just rearranging the size of it. And so that's a little bit of a clue of how I'm going to get back to that, recreating my overlay a little bit later. So let's leave the margin on for now. The other thing is you can change the quality of it. So it's defaults to high quality, so basically the same sort of quality as the actual image itself or the desktop itself. But you can also close this down or reduce the quality, and you can see now quite clearly that the quality of this, whoops, the daisy, I've just accidentally clicked into something else there. There we go. Let me come back. That's better. You can see that the quality of this is different to the quality of the actual original that it's copying. So that just means you can have a higher frame rate. But I've never found any issues with it on the best quality. And I'm on a really old 2013 MacBook. So yeah, never found any need to change that myself. The next thing you can do is whether you want to show the mouse cursor or not. So do you want people to be able to see where the mouse is on your screen? And you can see that it's reproducing the screen in the output there. But if I click this one off, then now you don't see the mouse. So you may want that on or off. The other thing you can do that's good if you are doing screen demonstrations is change the size of the mouse cursor in the output from normal to gigantic. And you can already see what's happening. It's putting a really big arrow, so that makes it very clear if you're doing screen demos. And you can also toggle mouse clicks on or off. So if I click, you can see the output there has that little circle around just to make it clear when you are clicking and when you're not clicking. So that can be toggled on and off. I'm just going to put that back for now because I personally don't have that. I myself use a Pro Mouse, which is this thing that I've been using. In fact, where I can spotlight different items, or I can zoom different items, or I can have the little halo around the mouse and so on. And I did a video all about that, and I shall link to that up in the top corner and down in the bottom as well. It's a very cheap, just menu bar app that is, I find it easy to use. And the other thing about it is it also works obviously when you're not using Ecamm. So I use it sometimes in Zoom and Teams, although usually I do have my virtual camera from Ecamm feeding into that. Sometimes if you're just not and you want to do a screen share through Zoom or Teams or whatever, then it's handy to have that Pro Mouse feature there as well. The last one in the preferences here is show everything when sharing the entire screen. And that is basically whether to show or hide your Ecamm interface. Because you can imagine if you were on a single screen laptop and you had your Ecamm stuff, but then you were also wanting to demonstrate some things on screen as well, it could get a little bit messy. And so having that toggled off means that when you do a screen sharing of your entire screen, in fact, let me just show you that now. 1 second. So if I change from current application to the secondary display, it's going to look a little bit weird because I'm in demo mode. But if I come out of demo mode and then I'll toggle this on and off, you'll see how it looks. So now that I'm out of demo mode, you should just be able to see that I've got the, in fact, let me move this window over here. You should just see I've got the website on there. But if I click on the show everything, you'll also see all of the interface from Ecamm Live pops on. So that's just how you show and hide that. Even so, even with that feature, sometimes it is a little bit tricky to do a screen sharing full screen when you're on a laptop with a single screen. But fortunately, I should have had this handy. But fortunately, there is a simple little thing that you can buy for, I think, less than $4 or $5. And it's one of these things. And it's a little thing that's basically a dummy monitor. So you plug that into your computer and the computer thinks that there's another screen there. And then you can share that screen and do any demonstrations you want on there whilst watching it on your preview screen. And it's a great way to get around the fact of only having a single monitor. I did a video all about that, believe it or not. And I'll put a link to that in the top corner and also in the description as well. But for now, let's get back to our screen sharing here. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to share the current application again, because there is a slight issue with screen sharing in Ecamm Live, in my view, or one minor lacking feature, I should say, which is that if you think about this view that I've got here, where I've got my picture on one side and I've got my screen sharing on the other side, or even if you think about the one that we're going to try and replicate, which is this one with the image on one side and the camera on the other, the screen share on the other. As it stands, there is no way to actually simply create that effect in Ecamm Live. You can add, obviously, as we've got here, we've got the source is a screen share and we've got this picture in picture. So it seems like we're almost there really, doesn't it? We just need to resize this one in the background. However, you can't resize the one in the background. You can only resize this one. So we can also swap between these two and do like this, so that then the camera becomes the main picture and this becomes the picture in picture. But again, we can't now resize the one behind. So the way that I created this one, my main sort of screen sharing view, is I just sort of cheated really, and I dragged this one over to where I wanted it. And then I came down to my overlays panel, and down at the bottom, I added another camera feed. And so there I added in this one, and then I think I changed it to be probably a custom size. I cover all of this about how to create scenes in another video about creating scenes, believe it or not. So I just dragged that one over there. Obviously, we've got this secondary video in the background, which we don't really want, but it's going to be covered up by the scene overlay anyway. So we'll come back to that view in a minute, because that's the view that we'll actually use to build out that effect that we had earlier using that overlay. I'm going to recreate the one that Michael was asking about, but for the moment I'll just tell you about this third-party software as well, because it's something you might want to consider as well. So there is something called NDI Tools, NDI standing for Network Device Interfaces, or Interface, I think. I can't quite remember exactly. And this is a suite of tools, really, that are specifically for transmitting video and sometimes audio, but predominantly video over networks. And it's kind of like an industry standard. And yet there are a sort of, as I say, a suite of tools, but there's one in particular that we are going to use. I'll leave a link, obviously, to this down below as well. And yeah, if you come down, the one that you may have heard people talking about is NDI Scan Converter, which is for capturing the screen. Well, they've actually changed the name of it quite recently, because they're about to release version 5 in NDI 5, and so NDI Screen Capture is the new name for NDI Scan Converter. However, NDI 5 is not quite out yet, and so what we need to do is go down and get the NDI 4. I'm sure when NDI 5 comes out, I'll be there with an updated video about all of this. But if you come down to the bottom of this page, you'll see that there is a download for NDI Tools for Mac. And I'm presuming, because you're an Ecamm Live user and because you're watching this, then you'll be on a Mac. So NDI Tools for Mac. And what you need to do is just download this package. But in fact, it's not quite a straight download. So first of all, you'll click on it, and then it will bring up a window where you put in your name and email address, and then you click submit and it will send you an email. And once you get your email, in there will just be a simple click to download link, and that downloads the tools. Then you'll open the package, the DMG file that will open up, and that will have, basically, it'll look something like this. And it's got these different packages with all of the different tools in. The one that we want in particular, and actually the only one that I'm using, is the Scan Converter. So as I say, in version 4, it's still called Scan Converter, but the new name in version 5 will be Screen Capture. But you just double click on this, and then it will run you through a sort of normal installation as you would be familiar with on a Mac. Now, I say a normal installation process, but I did a video yesterday or the day before about a application, ProMouse, and one thing I neglected to talk about was the actual installation process, because I often recommend apps that I've used for a long time, and I've often forgotten about the actual installation steps that you have to go through, and I just take it for granted, or had taken it for granted, that people would be familiar with the installation process. But of course, sometimes there can be sort of things that can be a little bit strange about installation processes that you need to be aware of, and so I'm going to try and make sure that in future I do actually talk about those as well. And that's the case, in fact, with this one, because it is a screen sharing application essentially that we're installing here, that's going to be able to share an application window with Ecamm Live. And so one thing you'll have to do is you'll have to grant permission to it to access your screen. Now, it will prompt you to do this during the installation anyway, but I just want to let you know about it and show you what it's doing so that you are familiar with it and it doesn't take you by surprise and you wonder, why is it asking for these permissions to my system. So what it'll do is when you click on the link, it's going to take you through to an area of your system preferences, but I'll show you how to get to that just so that you're familiar with it anyway. It's going to take you through to your security and privacy section in your system preferences. And then from there, it's going to also take you into your privacy section when it loads up. The age of my Mac is now showing, isn't it? So it will take you into the privacy section up here, just in the top. So then from here, basically, we've got lots of different areas of your Mac, such as your contents, calendar, reminders, all those sorts of things. And these are basically all areas of your Mac that you're granting access to different applications. So if we look down my location services, there's a whole series of apps here that have access to my location. Now, some of those, you may want them to have access to your location, some of them not. You'll notice Google Chrome does not have access to my location. Although it asks for it, I specifically didn't authorize it. So yeah, it's up to you whether you grant access, but bear in mind that some things are absolutely required in terms of the app actually functioning, and other things are just things that they request, but you don't really have to give to them. So just bear that in mind when things are asking for access to different areas of your Mac, whether or not you want to grant it. And yeah, I've decided that Google Chrome doesn't actually need my location. Thank you very much. So the area in particular that this app NDI is going to take you through to is the screen recording. And if you think about it, it makes perfect sense because it is a screen capturing app. So it needs to have access to your screen recording capabilities in order to be able to access that. So what you'll notice is when it takes you through here, first of all, I don't know if I mentioned that, make sure you click the little lock to unlock it to be able to make any changes, because as a default, when you come into this area of system preferences, it will be locked. And what you'll find is it probably will have put in, whoops-a-daisy, I need to not do that. I don't need to do that in the middle of a demonstration, do I? Otherwise, it might stop it actually working for me. But as a default, it will show up like this. It will have no checkbox next to it. Incidentally, if for some reason it hasn't even shown up here, then you would simply click on the plus button and you would add it in manually. So click that, it will open up the normal file browser and you can find the NewTek NDI scan converter app and add it in. But I'll just click that again and click through that one as well. That is the only area of the system preferences that it is going to ask for permission to access. But yes, so that's one thing to bear in mind with any of these application installs, is just to look at what they're actually asking for permission for. The one that may catch some people out sometimes with some installs is, as well as asking for permission here, there's also sometimes on this general tab, sometimes you'll get a message. There's nothing there at the moment, but sometimes a message will pop up here specifically asking if you want to explicitly grant permission to an app for one thing or another. So sometimes if you look in the privacy and your app's still not working and you're not quite sure why, after a fresh install, then sometimes there might be a little thing here to give permission, or maybe down at the bottom here. So anyway, I hope that wasn't going over that too much, but I just did want to be clear, so it was yeah, nice and clear for everyone what to expect during the installation process. So with that said, let me get back to the screen that we actually want to share. I can close that down. That was just the installation window. So we want to share this window. Now, what we have to do is come down and start Scan Converter. It will appear in the bottom of your dock, and it's just that orange app at the bottom there. So that little NDI there. And if you come up into the top, the app doesn't actually open as such into a sort of a user interface. All it does is it appears in the menu bar. So when you click on the app to open it, or if it's already open, just click on it, it will open up like this with just these couple of different menu bar items. And so, or menus items. And the first one you want to do is go to File, and then what you'll see here is a list of all of the different apps that you've got open, and then within each app you'll also see all of the different windows that are open for that app. And here we're going to select the window that we want to use for our screen sharing. So here we want to select our Safari window. So now that we've selected the window that we want, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to my screen sharing now, and I'll just show you how we're going to add this into our scene. So let me come here for 1 minute. I will do my screen sharing like this, and then I will come over to, let's just create a duplicate of this one. So we come down to this duplicate. If you ever want to copy a scene that you've already got, then you can just come down here and duplicate it. And then we'll call this one NDI test. There we go. And I'll just drag this one up to the top just so that we've got them close to each other. So now with the NDI test, so what we want to do is we want to replicate that that scene. And just to remind you what it looks like this, doesn't it? So we've got my picture on one side, and then we've got the little window there where we want to have that little website window coming up there. So if I come back to that view, NDI test. So let's start with actually let's change this to be a blank scene. And then what we need to do is just add in my camera. So I'm going to come down to the bottom and click on the camera. And then let's resize this one, and I shall make this to be a so wide, or we could just make this custom, and then we can be sure that we're going to get it exactly the right size. So it's something like that, isn't it, over on one side. And then we want to drop in our little NDI preview window here. So what I'll do is I'll come down to the camera again. Now, although it is a desktop sharing, it is actually classed as a camera. So all of the NDI tools are classed as a camera. And incidentally, there is also an NDI mobile app as well, NDI HX Capture, to bring in your mobile device. And so as a feed, and I made a video about that as well. So I'll link to that up in the top corner and in the description as well. But for the moment, let's just come down to our little camera here, and we click on that one. And as a default, it's brought in obviously our default camera view here. So then what we do is we click on this little pencil icon next to it, and we've got a choice of all of our cameras. And then now you can see we've got this one called Scan Converter. So that has appeared now. And if I click on that one, you can see that we've basically got our, this is our website. If I just come over here and scroll, I'm now scrolling on the website. So this is getting close to that video we were trying to replicate, wasn't it? So what we need now is to put an overlay on this. Now, fortunately, I prepared ahead and prepared one earlier that looks exactly like what we need. So again, link to the video about overlays in the description. But for now, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come over here, and I've got some samples here, and this was the sample overlay. So this is how I would do it. Now, this is a static overlay. Obviously, the one I had was more like animated. But what we can do is we can now resize this. In fact, let me just lock that overlay so that it doesn't move. And then I can now resize my picture. I can put it wherever I want. Sometimes a bit tricky when something's behind something else to get it in exactly the right place. So that's a little bit on the large size. I mean, that might be just me, to be honest, but there you go. I'm a little bit on the large side myself. So there we go. We've got that in there, and it's just coming right up to that corner. And then if we want this one, we could drag this one over to here, and then we could just resize this one. And there you go. It fits perfectly into that window. So that would be one way that we could do it. And you could see I could do the scrolling. It doesn't have the animating on the text, but we could have imported this as an animated overlay as well and just left that blank if we'd wanted to, with that sort of animated text as well. Or let's go back to our original version. So this is the way doing it using NDI, but let's just go back to that first one that we did as well, where we'd sort of worked our way around it really. So if I come to this one, current application, so now we've got our window open. So let's try and replicate that. You can see that we've got these two camera views in the sort of Ecamm only method without using that NDI. So now let me add in my overlay, and we can sort out the alignment and everything afterwards. So that was here, my example overlay. And so we're just going to do the same really. We'll put this one in here, and then we'll resize the corner. Let me just come out of this a minute. It's because it's behind this other one. It's a bit tricky to get to. I tell you what, let me just hide that overlay. I'll make this a lot smaller. Sometimes when something's behind something else, it seems a little bit tricky to actually get exactly where you want to grab hold of it. There we go. That fits perfectly in there. And then in here, we'll drag this one up like that. And then that is something more or less, I think, like what we're looking for. The only thing is this has got these borders around them, but just remember how we got rid of that before is we went into here, and then we went to add margin when zooming to an app or window. So if I take that out, now it fits. You see, it doesn't quite fit though, does it? It's not quite the right size. Well, the way around that is I just drag the actual app onto this size, this window, what I can do is I can actually just resize the window. So I could pull it out a little bit until it fills just exactly the same size. That looks about spot on now. So that looks about right, doesn't it? So that is how I would have created this if I hadn't cheated and just done a screen recording of it. So I hope that answers the question, Michael. And if any of you have got any other questions about anything that I've covered, or got any comments about what I've done, or if you've got any better ways of doing indeed what I'm doing, or screen sharing, then do let me know. Before we go, there is one other thing I should mention actually, which I'd meant to talk about, and I nearly forgot. Naughty me. I told you about NDI Scan Converter from the NDI.TV website. I'll link to that one. There is also a paid version which does have some slightly more advanced functionality to it. I should at least mention that one, and that is the Sienna NDI Scan Converter. So the other one that I showed you was by NewTek. Those are the people who actually make NDI, but the Sienna is a sort of, I think, a forked version of it. But anyway, it's available for $30.99. And yeah, it does have these extra little functions in there. So there are some different things and like a slightly more advanced interface, I suppose. And you can also have audio going through that as well. However, for what I'm doing, and in terms of audio, you know, we can handle all of that through Ecamm anyway. I've not found the need for it. One use case that you might have is if you were going to want to sort of share multiple different apps from the same screen. You can only share one at a time with the original NDI, or the other NDI that I told you, and also the Ecamm, the built-in functionality. You can only have one screen sharing. So if you ever wanted to share 3 parts of your screen individually, maybe you might need another one. I'm not sure. But anyway, I've got to just mention that there for completeness anyway. I think I've about covered screen sharing in Ecamm Live. So yeah, if you did find it useful, then please go ahead, like and subscribe to the channel, and I'll be creating a lot more content all about these sorts of things. So turn on those notifications so that you'll be alerted anytime I do. And yeah, I'll also link to some other videos I've made on similar sorts of topics on the right hand side here. And so until the next time, have a great day.